So the first thing that we have on our agenda, this is a meeting of the Audit Committee, December 21st already. And can we go around and do introductions, starting with Kara? Just your name and...
Eric Shaw, Executive Assistant. Roseanne Powell, Board Manager.
Joe Anderson, Student Representative.
Patty Sullivan, a Board Member.
Janice Hansen, Internal Auditor.
Michelle DePass, Chair of the Audit Committee.
Bernard Adams, Chief of Research Assessment and Accountability.
Myung Lee, Interim Deputy Superintendent of Business and Operations.
Dan Miley, partner with Cabot Cola and Warwick, the district's external auditor.
I'm Terry Proctor with the Communications Department.
Thank you. And then for those of us online.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
Good afternoon.
I'll call on you. How about Andrew and then Claire?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Scott. I'm a board member.
I'm Claire Hertz, and I'm a returning former deputy superintendent supporting the audit work.
And then how about Kate and is it Angie?
Yeah. Hi, Kate Wilkinson, Assistant General Counsel, PPS.
Hi, I'm Angie Peterman. I am one of the consultants, A&C Consulting, along with Claire, that's been helping with the audit.
Great, thank you. Did we get everybody online? The first item on our agenda is a presentation of the audit results for the annual comprehensive financial report. The supporting documentation was just posted on Board Books, so you should have it in there, but I wouldn't expect that you've read through it yet. I think it was just posted. Did you want to go ahead?
So I'll take sort of a quick overview
Okay.
of the financial statements, if that's okay. Just sort of maybe some new things that are in there because there was a new accounting standard implemented by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that I'll refer to as GASB, just colloquial, that's how it's known.
Okay, what is it? What is the acronym?
GASB, so GASB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So
Excellent.
they are the ones who set the accounting rules for all municipal governments in the United States.
Excellent.
And then we'll go over a letter that was handed out for the people there, also was posted. I'll just start off. A lot of the paper or electronic pages that you see in front of us, it's not our work, it's the work of the district, and the staff there did a lot of work to put this together. So, so I'd like to thank them through this process as well. So the first page that would be ours, that may not be in the document itself yet, is the internal audit report.
And that's behind the letter?
Yeah, it's behind So you'll have the transmittal letter. You'll have awards that the district has earned for financial reporting from the GFOA, so the Government Finance Officers Association, and I always mess up.
So is this under TKW Reports 2023? It's 24 pages?
Yep.
Okay, great.
So
So
there's
that's in Board Books.
So there's 4 separate reports in there that are letters from us to get attached to that will be inserted into the financial statements. There is also a schedule of findings and question costs, which I'll go into as well. And then there's also the communication with those charged with governance, the audit results, which is also in paper in front of you. So we'll just sort of go through the annual comprehensive financial report, also known as the ACFR, then the single audit reporting, and then we'll go through the letter. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to ask.
Excellent.
Jump around. I will. Sometimes I forget that not everybody's an accountant. So
Yes, I think there are very few accountants
so
in the room.
yeah, so feel free
There's a
that
few.
if, hey, I can ask,
Okay.
answer your question. So the first report that is ours is the independent auditor's report. A change that they made last year, which I think was a good one, is that they moved the opinion right up to the front, because that's what everybody cares about. The good news, clean, unmodified opinion for the district. So that is, things are good. These financial statements, in our opinion, based on the test work that we did, and as Yang and his team can tell you, it's a lot of test work. And then it gives a little bit about how we come to that conclusion, and then responsibilities, and then what responsibility and what our opinion is on the different sections of it. So you have financial statements, and then you have supplementary information, required supplementary information, and we give sort of in relation to opinions on the budget schedules, but then there's other stuff in there that we could say we don't give an opinion on, like the statistical information provided by the district. So we keep it more on the financial side of our opinion, and the other stuff we say, yes, it's there, and we're not aware of anything that makes us think that it's wrong, and it doesn't contradict anything that we know,
Okay.
essentially.
Okay.
That's sort of the layman terms of all the words. Moving on in the financial report, you'll then get to the management discussion and analysis. This is the section that we encourage everybody to read. It is sort of what it says it is. It's management's discussion and analysis of the changes from last year to this year. So it gives a comparative of the information of the statement of net position, which is the district's balance sheet on a full accrual
It's
basis.
here.
And the statement of activities, which is the district's income statement on a full accrual basis. So that's with all the liabilities and assets according to the rules in there. And so it's a good place to start. It's, if you're not going to read all pages of the report, it's provides a summary of those. So on page 20, you'll have the summary of the net position, comparing last year to this year's numbers. And then some discussion on why they changed. And then the statement of activities is on page 22. So this is, once again, your income statement and the changes from last year. And then some discussion about why. Moving on to the statement of net position, you'll see the first of a couple new items for there. So last year, the district implemented GASB statement 87, which was the new lease standard. The district did not have any lease payable on the leasee side. They had some leaseor arrangements that got recorded last year, but not the leasee. So this is where you signed an agreement to rent a building or a piece of equipment or copiers or whatever building or equipment. And so you now record what they call an intangible right to use. So that means that you have access to use that how you see fit within the rules of the agreement for a certain length of time. So GASB decided that you should recognize that to make it similar, to remove the difference between whether you bought the copier or the building or the equipment or you leased it. Essentially, in their mind, if you look at the basis of conclusion, it's the same transaction.
Okay.
So you got an asset for money, essentially is what it's trying to do. GASB Statement 96, which was implemented this year for subscription-based IT arrangements, so subscriptions, so this is a lot of it, your curriculum, a lot of that's electronic, your software systems. In the past, you would have bought these things. Now you're signing agreements to use them over a certain length of time. So similar to leases, in fact, a lot of the language is very similar to the lease standard. You capitalize that right to use again.
Is that like a licensing then?
Sort of, yeah. So you pay a certain amount of money to say, we're gonna use this equipment for over 5 years. So let's say you pay $1 million. So over the next 5 years, you recognize on a full accrual basis,
Mm-hmm.
200,000 of it.
Yes.
So a piece of it for every year that you use it.
Yes.
You straight line that. Because once again, that's the length of time that the district was able to use it. So it didn't seem right to recognize all that expense according to GASB in the year that you bought it,
Mm-hmm.
or you paid for it. On the flip side, there for both of these is, so what's the other side of the asset? It's the liability. So on the next page, you have the liabilities page.
And can you reference your page numbers?
Oh, sorry, page 30. So page 29 is the statement of net position. That's the asset, and page 30 is the liabilities. You have lease and subscription payable. These are the counterbalance. So if you don't pay cash up front for all of these things, you have a liability to pay for them. So that liability is measured at the present value of those future payments. So there's an management, so your accounting department has determined an incremental borrowing rate for each of these based on the length of time and when it was entered into, to discount those future payments back to what it would be essentially if you had to pay for it all right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this once again replicates if you borrowed the money, what would you have? You would have principal payments and interest. So that's now how those are reflected in the financial statements. So
So you come out
yeah,
same,
yeah,
as if you just done the whole
So-
bunch at first.
yeah. But it represents future payments that the district is required by the agreements that they've signed to make.
Mm-hmm.
So in GASB's mind, they made it very similar to debt.
Okay.
So that's sort of what I like to, as a reference point. They're not exactly the same, but your right to use assets are like capital assets, and your subscription and lease payables is like your debt, long-term debt.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Okay.
pay it over time.
That does help.
So. The next page, page 31, is your statement of activities. You don't see too many changes in there, but once again, some differences is that those payments that used to be made and expensed all away regarding subscriptions are now taken out, recorded as principal payments. And now you have more interest there as well. And then the amortization is now recorded in expense. Just read that.
Okay.
The next section is the fund financial statements. I won't get too into those. And then there's the notes on page 53. It gives probably in a much more succinct manner, summarizes the new accounting standard and what they're trying to do there. Once again, the financial statement notes help explain all the numbers that are in the statement of net position and the statement of activities. So there's a lot of detail that goes into that, and there's a lot of information that supports that. So that's where most of your financial statements are. It's in the notes, but it gets really in the weeds. Following the notes is the section for required supplementary information. So these include certain schedules for your pension liabilities with PERS, and then also the district's own pension liabilities, and those also your other post-employment benefits, also known as OPEB, so OPEB. And additionally, there are required budget to actuals for your general fund and your special revenue funds are there. Following the required supplementary information is supplementary information, which again is your budget to actual schedules for the district. And then following that is your statistical section. So that's where it has a lot of 10-year history of financial information. It has some operating ratios and statistics there. So once again, a lot of good information, but a lot of that is coming from the district itself as sort of to give context of how the environment that the district is operating. And then the last piece that will be part of this annual financial report, once it's all put together, is the independent auditor's report in compliance with Oregon state regulations. I lost some pages there.
Oops, I'm looking for that too.
It's in the TKW report packet. I think it's your second report there. Maybe. Just see. The independent auditor's report on compliance and internal controls over financial reporting based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with Oregon state regulations. So state law has what they call Oregon minimum standards. So this covers certain things that's covered in the report. So making sure you're putting your deposits that whereas allowed by law. So you can't just pick any bank, it has to be certain banks that could support. Pretty much trying to minimize the risk to municipal governments. There's restrictions on how much debt that the district can take. Budget law, that's where a lot of this comes in. How funding from outside sources, investments, state school funds, public contracting law, and law goes on. So these are all requirements by state law, and one of the requirements as a municipal auditor is that we have to check these things and give a report to the state, to you guys, to put in with your financial statement. So the Secretary of State knows whether or not you're complying. The good news here is that we are not aware of any exceptions to Oregon minimum standards.
Excellent.
So that is good news. So,
That's great news.
yes, that is very good news.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
we've
the last couple
had,
of years, we've had minor things.
yeah, minor things.
And this year, nothing, so
Nothing.
that's excellent.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've had like teachers' experience, which that can get messy just, and some of it may be luck of the draw. But we tested and we did not find anything in the sample that we selected. So that is very good news.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good to know, yeah.
The next section is, I'll go over, is the report on requirements for federal awards, which is outside of the ACFR.
Right. This is in a separate attachment that's
Okay.
posted.
It's the CFA FY23. I believe it's the very
Draft.
last one under number 2.
Draft Portland Public Schools CFA.
Yeah,
Correct.
CFA.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Did I
talking
say
like an
that?
auditor.
Did I was just gonna ask if I said that correctly.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
So that's the,
appreciate it.
yep, schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this is because the district expends over $750,000, and they do it by more than a little bit. The district's required to get what they call a single audit. So this is an audit of federal awards. And it's pretty prescriptive by the federal government. The Office of Management and Budget, OMB, sends out a compliance supplement every year, which is around 1,000 pages for telling us auditors of what we should do and how we should do it. And that's in addition to uniform guidance, which is the actual federal code. So the first report that would be in there, because one of the requirements of uniform guidance is that you are audited underneath not only generally accepted auditing standards, but also governmental auditing standards, which is auditing standards, what we call the Yellow Book, which is put out by the Government Accountability Office of the federal government. So once again,
Yes.
yeah, so.
I don't see that letter posted. The
I'm wondering if the latest version is up. I just noticed that what we have posted in board books has many pages just marked draft that are blank.
Well, I think this might be in a separate pack with the other TKW reports.
I see, yeah, there are a lot of blank. It looks like placeholders.
Safer, so they're
Okay.
gonna eventually be harmonized.
Yeah. So we issued another report that that is a report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance and other matters based on audit financial standards performed in accordance with governmental auditing standards. To summarize, we have to look at and report as part of our audit. If we become aware of any deficiencies in internal control, we have to report on that and put that in and let them know. So this is where this reports let readers know that there was one material weakness that was found during the audit. And then referencing the schedule of findings and question costs.
Is this the letter then we've got printed out?
No.
No,
I did
that's
find it. It's in the TKW reports on page 9.
Page 9.
Yeah. So we'll go over that finding here in a little bit once we get to the schedule of findings and question costs.
Okay.
The next report in that document, the uniform guidance, what page, do you have what page that is on?
The letter starts on page 9 in the TKW reports document that's attached.
Yeah. So.
Goes through page. And then the.
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a hard time following. The TKW reports I have don't have page numbers on them.
But if you, on the side, if you hold the scroll thing down, see what page you're on, that's how I'm seeing
Okay.
what page it is.
It doesn't always line up with the actual document, but
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay.
but you're saying in the TKW reports, sorry, where was the letter, Janice?
When I open it, it's on page 9. When I scroll, it says page 9 on the side when I scroll down, but it
9 of 20.
Yeah.
9 of 24.
So it starts independent auditors report on compliance for each major federal program.
Yeah.
Just to orient
I got
us.
it.
Do you have it,
Thank you.
Andrew? Okay.
Yep.
Me too. I was in the wrong one as well.
Sorry. So this is our report on the actual testing of the federal awards. We'll go over which programs it was, but there were 4 major programs. So that's a lot of testing for the district. The good news is that we were, after we finished testing, no findings as a result of our single audit. So we found no control deficiencies over compliance of federal award, compliance with uniform guidance, and no compliance findings either. So that is very good news. Once again, the opinions on the first, then it goes into the basis, talks about responsibilities. It mentions that there's a report. It goes over internal controls. If we found anything, that would have been noted there as well. And then the last section is our report on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards required by the uniform guidance. And this just says, in relation to the financial statements, we believe that these are materially correct. So as part of our audit of the financial statements, and of course some other procedures over it, the CFA is fairly stable. Following that report in the TKW report PDF, I'm assuming there's then the schedule of findings and question costs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's looking like page 12 of 24.
Yeah. So I'll let you, instead of flipping back, the PDF of the report itself, the CFA, is there. You can look at all the different programs with the amounts that were spent during the year. It was up from about 94.6 million last year to about 110 million this year. So there's that. So the first page on the schedule of findings and question costs is a good summary of pretty much everything I've talked about or will talk about. There was one material weakness identified over internal controls over financial reporting. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over major federal programs. We have no audit findings required to be reported within uniform guidance. There's the 4 programs that we audited as major programs. So the Emergency Connectivity Fund program, IDEA, so special education grants to states and special education preschool grants, supporting effectiveness instruction state grants, and then the ever favorite Education Stabilization Fund. Then we get to the finding. So as we were going through the audit, we found 2 transactions that were recorded incorrectly in the trial balance presented to us. So these were not the usual transactions. Most grants that the district receives is done on a reimbursement basis. So you spend the money, you file the report, you get the money. So both of these transactions involved unearned revenue. So that means that you got cash, but you hadn't applied it to a federal award yet. So, or a state grant award. So whatever grant. So one of them involved a federal award, one of them involved a state grant. So these weren't your normal transactions. They did not represent any cash misstatement. It was just how they recorded those transactions. So the first one was to clarify, that was 9,304,000, so that's 9.3 million. And the second one was 119,899,000, or roughly just under 120 million. So at the end of the day, the district did correct these. So the correction has been reflected in those financial statements. While going through this, and Leon can step in at any time here to expand, there's been some turnover in the accounting department, actually a fair amount of turnover. There's vacant positions. So you have new people trying to do more. So there's some of that there. There was also some lack of communication with the accounting department, that departments went and did things without telling the finance department, and that will also cause difficulty to get things recorded correctly the first time. And then just like I said, these weren't the usual transactions that the district normally enters into. They happen, but they aren't, and there's processes for them, but it's not the routines type of stuff that they do. So
is part of this, so there's turnover and maybe a lack of communication. Is there some part of this that once someone has been in a job for a while, it's a recording error is what it sounds like. They're
Yeah.
big recording errors, but
Yeah.
is it something that you would expect once people were brought on board and onboarded and were familiar with their work?
I would expect so. Also, if you were there for the whole transaction, so some of these
Mhm.
was recorded on by one person, the original transaction, and then the reversing entry to actually record it was done by another one. So you had sort of a changing of the guard.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I would expect if the people there now ran into this transaction again, because we've had a lot of discussions,
Okay.
it wouldn't happen again. But it is some big numbers. And so it's learning.
Okay.
But
Well, we're learning insufficient, so.
yeah.
Can I ask a question? Was the I just going into a little bit more detail, was the revenue just reported in the wrong way or the wrong place? Or was the 130 million roughly not recorded at all in the financial statements originally?
One was recorded twice, so the 9.3 million was recorded in one fund, but they wanted it recorded in another fund to be in accordance with how things normally happen, and so it just got recorded twice. Canceled each other out, so there was no impact on fund balance or cash or anything like that. It was just trying to clear out that unearned revenue that was recorded at the last year. So sort of that transaction of how do we get it out of one place and where we want to record it now that we know what it is and what we want to do with it. The other one was cash that came in the door and was recorded all as revenue prematurely. So it was a timing issue. Eventually, this should be revenue for the district. The 120 million was for the relocation of a middle school. So the state legislature told DAS to make a grant to the district. They made the grant. And in that grant agreement, it's supposed to be spent on certain things. So you don't earn the money until you actually spend it on relocating the school. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I guess I just want to be really clear because I just want to make sure I don't want to understate the issue, but what I think I hear you saying on this state grant is that we got $119.9 million and our accounting staff recorded that as revenue into the district. But because of GASB rules, because we hadn't, actually, I'm not going to try and explain why the GASB rules exist as they do. That should have been recorded as unearned revenue.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, and again, tell me if I'm understating the problem, but this is really like, we got $120 million. We put it in category A. GASB says it should have been in category B, and we didn't catch that right away. And so that stayed on our books. And that is part of this audit process. It became clear that it should have been in category B. And so we've moved it to category B.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
So.
I love how you simplified that, Andrew.
Yeah. Like I said, there's no cash missing. There's nothing that wasn't recorded. There was no cash that wasn't recorded. And this is just how do you recognize the revenue and expense associated with those transactions. So,
and it shows up as a material weakness and not just a deficiency because of the size of the grant. Is that from your perspective?
Yeah.
Okay.
So quantitatively, 120 million means something to the district. And also we're also not looking at it just on the district as a whole. Our opinion, which I can go into a little bit further, the opinion on the financial statements is on opinion units. So we give an opinion unit on each major fund. So each fund we have to look at, is that fund materially stated as well? So that's where something may not be material to the district in total, but to the fund that it was recorded in, it would be material.
But only if it's a major fund or
Well, you have
significant for all funds.
Well, you have the opinion units are government, for the district anyways, this isn't all. So the opinion is governmental activities, major funds, and all aggregate other information, which for the district is only the internal service revenue, the internal service fund. So pretty much all the funds, at least at the reporting level, so you have a lot of sub-funds that the district uses to help manage the finances. But at that top level, pretty much every fund is its own opinion unit in essence. So we have to look at each one of them individually, and then we also have to look at everything in total.
Thanks.
I think that the second part that Andrew simplified for us makes sense now, but I still don't understand the expenditure piece.
So as the staff was trying to get the revenue where they wanted it, they knew that fund balance needed to come down to zero in that. So in essence, they recorded the revenue and the expenses and then recorded the revenue to zero it out and then recorded the revenue again in another fund, where the fund that they wanted it to. So they were trying to get to the right place. And on the balance sheet, they did.
Okay.
So this is an income statement impact, at least for the 9.3. The 120 million did have the balance sheet impact because of the unearned revenue, which is considered a liability.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then the recommendation.
So the recommendation is, we like to leave it as broad. You guys know your business better than we do and how the operations. So we just say, well, district policies should be implemented to prevent this going forward. Then, of course, we talked with Myong and Tracy and the other people in your accounting department. They came up with a corrective action plan, which we reviewed. I don't know if
Yes. That's also posted in the material.
Yeah.
As yet another document.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
So yeah, so district management has responded.
Mm-hmm.
They have a plan forward.
They concur.
They concur. So sort of an unfortunate incident, but it all got corrected at the end of the day. And so I think just turnover and complexity, just compounding each other. I mean, one of those things you can go through, but when you're short-staffed, with new staff, with complex transactions, and then people aren't communicating throughout the district, you can see how something might slip through.
Mm-hmm. I think the good news is that it's been, management concurs, the district concurs, that things have already been corrected. There was no, serious impacts.
So, and
overall,
I'll stress is that
in the end, at the end of the day.
Yeah, the accounting department to get through, 4 major single audit programs for single audit, that's a lot. And so, in essence, we did a lot of testing, and to only find 2 with everything that's been going on can be counted as a win as well. And that the fact that found it, corrected it, so the financial statements are fairly stated. So
Fantastic. I appreciate your presentation, and also just want to appreciate the finance staff who are they've gotten through this stress testing, it sounds like. Does anybody have any other questions?
I think it's done. Are you done?
I have one. I just have the letter that sort of summarizes again.
It's the letter dated
today. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just skim through this really fast. Please stop me if you have any questions. This is our letter. By auditing standards, we have to inform those in charge of governance, which is you and the Board of Education, you as the Audit Committee and the Board of Education, of certain things. Talks about our responsibilities, talks about other communications that we've made. So we've signed arrangement letters. We sent a beginning Communication. We talk about that the district implemented GASB Statement 96. We didn't identify other than already been noted significant or unusual transactions recorded after corrections. It goes into what we believe are some significant accounting estimates. Accounting estimates involve management decisions. They have to use their judgment to make these. So those charged with governance, as part of a responsibility, we encourage them to review those estimates to make sure that they don't indicate any management bias. Because estimates are judgment, so they create a little bit more risk. So we want you to say, hey, this isn't just you got $1, recorded $1. There's something more there. So investments are recorded at fair value. Once again, the district has the good people at BNY Mellon help value those investments for you guys. But still just make sure that, hey, does this seem correct? Depreciation. So that's based on estimated useful lives. So is the district expecting a vehicle to last 100 years? That doesn't seem right. And so just those kinds of things. Self-insurance claims, so these are incurred but not reported, so you don't really know what's out there, so you have to guess. And then, of course, there's pensions and OPEB, which is PERS and all those future payments that you don't know yet, but the district uses actuaries, or PERS uses actuaries to determine the PERS numbers anyways, of their best guess, because we know the number's not zero. So they have to estimate that. And then also the subscriptions themselves, that liability is based on that estimate of incremental borrowing rate and estimating that present value. And the same thing with leases. Next is, once again, goes over those audit adjustments laid out a little bit differently in a table format at each opinion unit. We're not aware of any uncorrected misstatements other than those that we would consider trivial. So you can imagine that there may be $1 or $2 off, but we're not going to trace down the penny. So there's that. We referenced the internal control and compliance findings that we already talked about. We're not aware of consultations with any other accountants that the district use. Next goes over future fund. So future GASB statements to be implemented. The list is getting shorter and shorter each year, so that is hopefully good news. There's sort of one out there, so GASB statement 100, accounting changes and error corrections. This is more of if something goes wrong, how to record it. There was the diversity in practice, as they call it. So different governments were doing different things, and GASB came out and said, hey, we should all do it this way and use this terminology, have these disclosures. So hopefully the district never really has to use those other than for implementing new accounting standards. And the next one is compensated absences. Once again, this is trying to modernize the rules around leave. So when the rules were first developed, you pretty much only had vacation time and sick time. Now you have sick time, vacation time, PTO, unlimited leave, every variety.
Dependent care.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Say that again.
Mental health days.
Yes.
Yes. So it goes over, if it falls in these buckets, this is how you record it. Now, once again, trying to get into, there's a lot of, because there was no guidance for a lot of this stuff, you had a lot of variety out there, people recording it different ways. So once again, trying to get everyone, at least trying to get somewhat comparable information. Next is an important thing for us is the responsibility for independence. We like to remind people that we are independent auditors. While we work very closely with management, we work for the board. We are the board's auditors. So we work for you. We could not do our job without management.
Of course.
And we appreciate all the assistance that they help us with trying to work through and gather all the documentation required to give our opinions. But at the end of the day, we can't make management decisions. So there's that. And basically it says we're going to try and maintain our independence, and you're going to tell us if there's anything that might impair our independence. And then there's a copy of the management representation letter, which is a letter that we get at the end of every audit of here's all the stuff that we represent to you. I'll let you go through the laundry list there, but it's 86 items long.
Yes, wow.
So we touch on pretty much every one of those points at some point during the audit. So this is once again the last chance for management to tell us, yes, this is what we're representing to you. So.
One very small thing, I think in the letter from the district, and I'm not sure if I saw it somewhere else, it notes that the governing body will plan of action will adopt it at January 9th, 2023, and it'll be 2024. So I think we just got the year wrong.
Okay.
Oh, and the corrective action plan.
Just a typo.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody have any other questions or communications? Thanks for the finance team. Yes, please.
Direction pass. So just on behalf of the staff and our really invaluable consultants as well, Claire and Angie, just wanted to share some appreciations and then talk a little bit about next steps, just to kind of recap. So definitely want to thank the team in the CFO's department, financial services team, the accounting and general ledger teams in particular, for really going year round, but especially during audit season, taking care of these 86 items that are included and described in this management letter. Thank you, Director Scott, for that typo. That's a helpful typo for us to clean up. We'll resubmit that. But it's obviously a very complicated undertaking to carry this work out, and there have been, as mentioned, a number of transitions. There's still some transitions that are ongoing. So definitely want to thank the team for their daily efforts to carry out these important responsibilities. Definitely want to thank Mr. Miley, Dan, and his colleague Nathan Scarpole.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You saw a lot of them, I'm sure.
Well, I saw my share, but our colleagues saw them much more than I did for the last few months. So thank you both and others on the TKW team for working with us again this year. Thank you, Claire and Angie, again. They were both incredibly helpful in supporting our team during some of our shortage areas in terms of staff. And Tracy Pinder is not here, but definitely want to, she couldn't be here today. She really wanted to be here, and obviously has been playing an instrumental role in leading the effort on the part of the team. So I also want to thank the members of this committee for your patience and understanding and flexibility under unusual circumstances with the timing of this report. And we stretched out our unusual timing till till late this afternoon. So by way of as a point of information, definitely needed that the extra time and the delay to reschedule this meeting till today, and appreciate your flexibility in accommodating that. And then some of the news about the finding also came up fairly recently, which is the reason why we couldn't get the materials posted until this afternoon. So appreciate your understanding of that. The next step in terms of the process is on January 9th, all the materials in final form will be presented to the full board, accompanied by a vote to accept the materials. And you'll see that some of the documents are in kind of different places for the purposes of this meeting. They will be harmonized, and the right letters from TKW will be included in the right documents with all together with PPS work product as well. So you'll see that in a, hopefully a more coherent fashion on December 9th. If anyone present or otherwise would like to follow up with staff in between now and January 9th, we would welcome that. We know it's we didn't give you enough time to reasonably review these materials prior to this meeting. So if members of the committee here or folks that might be watching the recording later care to follow up and ask clarifying questions or follow up in any way with staff, we welcome that between now.
That's great. I would personally love that, and I don't know, maybe we can buddy up so you're not doing multiple meetings if there's a few of us or 2 or 3 of us.
And just to echo one more, this process started back in May, so it's not something that happened.
I was curious about the timing.
Yeah, and so of course the easy stuff gets knocked out. It's always the hard stuff that you're trying to wrap up and figure out at the last minute. So we appreciate definitely everybody keeping with us and answering the questions. It's like, wait, are you sure? What are you doing? The famous question of the auditor always starts with just one more thing. I've told staff to just stop saying that piece of it.
Right, about December 15th or so, or I know that we moved the meeting back to accommodate some of this work, and appreciate the reporting out. Also hearing that there's really nothing to worry about, and that we'll get a more cohesive report January 9th. If there aren't any other questions.
I have a question. I'm just gonna repeat the question that you asked me earlier about whether or not having a material weakness affects our bond rating.
Yes.
I cannot speak directly to that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, this is just in real time here. I would expect and hope that it would not, that would not be considered by any of the credit rating agencies as a significant factor in determining the district's credit worthiness. To that extent, that's a big decision on the part of a rating agency, and in my experience, this wouldn't map by itself to a reconsideration of the district's credit. I'm also would invite Claire or Angie if they have additional thoughts or different thoughts to weigh in.
I would concur that I wouldn't anticipate something of this magnitude to have an impact on our bond rating.
And if I can also just say, as an editorial comment maybe, or maybe just an observation, I know PBS has been has worked really hard to avoid any findings whatsoever over the last several years, and that's to the district's credit. Different use of the word credit here,
yes.
But the district should be proud of that, right? PBS should be proud of that. I will say I have seen, especially in the district where I spent many years, that was true in many years, and in some years it wasn't, where there were one or more findings in the annual audit process. And similar to what we discussed here today, there's a clear articulation of the issue that was spotted. District concurs or partially concurs or disagrees and states their corrective action. That's filed by the state regulators, overseers, etc. So long story short, I don't see this as a particularly unusual event. Certainly, we want to get back to 0 findings as quickly as possible and forever. But
Hey, Myung,
yes.
Can I just add one thing? I concur. I would be very surprised in my experience to see this type of thing impact the bond rating. What I would say though is some of the underlying conditions that led to the material weakness around staff turnover, being short-staffed, having lots of vacancies. Those are the kind of things that bond agencies look at when they're looking at an organization's creditworthiness. So I would just encourage the board to keep those things in mind as we go into what is going to be a challenging season of potential reductions. That we hear a lot about needing to cut administration, and I'll just point out it is administration that does this and does it and either does it right or does it wrong. And so that's for me going to be something that I really want to focus on, making sure we as a board are correcting some of those underlying issues that might have led to the material weakness, because I think those could have a longer lasting impact.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for
I do
that.
have one more question. Sorry.
Just one more question.
Just to clarify, one more question, last thing. On the schedule of question costs at the very bottom, it says we're currently identified as a low risk entity. Does having this finding, it's not a single audit finding, I'm not totally sure. Does that mean we're no longer considered low risk?
Short answer is you will be considered a high risk auditee for the next 2 years.
That's what I thought.
Not
So-
3.
So you have to have 2 years, pretty much 2 clean years of no material weaknesses. Not that it's okay, but if you have a significant deficiency, it's not considered a high risk auditee. It's that material weakness that pushes you up to the high risk auditee. There's other things that can impact, of course, that lower high risk auditee thing, but we anticipate this gets handled. We do 2 years. The underlying direct impact, I guess, what I'm trying to say is it just increases our coverage. And historically, I forget how much, but we cleared the high risk auditee threshold just with the requirements or just with the major programs that we were required based on the rules that were given. So a low risk auditee, it's required to get 20% of your federal awards audited. High risk gets 40%. Well, you have some large federal programs there that they have to be audited every 3 years. So you audit them, if there's no findings, they're low risk for 2 years, then they become high risk again. Those we call type A programs. So that's above that threshold. So another line in that schedule of findings and question costs is what we consider that that type A threshold. So
It's like 3 million.
3 million. And that's because you're over 100 million. If you drop below that last year, it was 2 point something because you were at that 94. So it can float around, but in essence, it's probably going to stay, unless you have a significant change in that 2 to 3-ish million, that anything above that gets categorized as a type A, which means it has to be audited at a minimum every 2 years. And there's some other things, once again, that can, like the Education Stabilization Fund, the reason why that's considered a high risk type A isn't because you had any findings, it's because the federal government decided it's high risk. So the federal government, at the end of it, you can go through all your procedures. The federal government can also go and say, this program, we don't care what you do. If it's above your type A threshold, we want it audited because we consider it high risk just by its very nature.
So high risk pretty much means you get a little more audit.
Yeah. Yeah. In the
Twice
auditing
as
world,
much.
yeah, in the auditing world, higher risk, more work.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you. I don't know if you've got a colleague on, but thank you again.
I will pass it back to the team.
That 2 years will go by like that. Time's passing very quickly. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next agenda item, which is, excuse me, I'm a little to reorient. It's the contracts audit, status of implementation, and also posted in board book. And for those of us that are here in the room, we've got hard copies if anybody would like to look at hard copies. I had a hard time reading the board book. It's really tiny, so
Yeah.
we're this isn't the entire every single item. We pulled items that we wanted to follow up on or share, I would say share updates on. Did you want
If
to?
you want to leave, you're welcome.
Oh, yes, sorry. This might be really exciting for you, or it might be really boring, but it's this close to the holiday. I'm sure you've got things to do.
Just one more thing.
Just
one more thing.
Thank you, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Should I go through what's been highlighted?
Yes.
Or Janice, do you want to?
You want me to start?
Yeah, if you can start and then you can go, yes, thank you, because I know there's been an update this afternoon, so.
Okay, so, just to
Can you just
set a little bit of
ground-
history for
yes,
what
context.
happened. So we issued the contracts audit in 2020, in June of 2020, and there were like 20 recommendations. And the district has been working to implement those recommendations. So the complete list of all the recommendations is posted in the board books. What I did for a printed copy to make the view a little bit bigger so we could actually see it is I printed just the ones that are outstanding, the ones I have not been able to confirm implementation of. When you look in board books, all the ones that are grayed out that say confirmed are implemented and we don't need to keep talking about them.
It's just the completed.
The ones that
Or-
I confirmed
or
the
you confirmed,
implementation.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, yes, thank you.
So on the printed one that has a little bit bigger font, the only ones that are outstanding are listed here. So, so there we go. Do you want me to kind of go through the key ones? Or-
Yeah, the key ones would be great, and I mean, I think the ones that we talked about, number 3C,
Okay, I'll just read
4,
the,
4B,
read it
17
and
and
then we'll
18.
let,
Yeah.
I could go
Dr.
through
Adams
something
jump
either
in,
way.
or do you wanna read it?
Oh, I wasn't
Yeah.
gonna read to people, but I can talk
Yeah,
about what each
yes,
one is
okay,
about and
thank
what
you,
we're
that would be
doing about it.
helpful.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you, and to be with you in space again. Just to recap, these contracts, the contracts that were audited were personnel services contracts that impact and have direct contact with students. The majority of those contracts are racial equity and social justice partnership contracts. And I inherited leadership of that department as of August 1. So Janice has been quickly onboarding me to what's been going on with the audit and what needs to happen. So starting with, I'll go through what was highlighted for me this afternoon. Starting with number 3, this was a recommendation that we perform contract performance evaluations prior to deciding whether or not we would again work with a contractor. So I wanted to talk about what we are putting into place. Luckily, I also have the research and evaluation team as a part of my team.
Excellent.
And they are working on impact analyses by partner, so that would mean by contract,
Yes.
to understand the impact of the provided services on things like student attendance, student achievement as measured by a couple of different things, GPA, student discipline. So we're trying to see if there are any impacts there.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, because our partners are working in schools, we are working on, it's going to be really neat. It's going to be like a Yelp review site that we're going to have internally for our partners, where the principals will give a review of the services that they've provided, and that will inform our renegotiation and our next talks with our partners.
Okay.
You may remember that our current racial equity and social justice contracts came out of an RFP that was released back in 2020. So we've had it was a 3-year RFP. So it's
Okay.
time for us to renew the RFP come in the new year for the next 3 years.
Okay.
So all of this type of information will go into our process of evaluation before we award any contracts moving forward for the next 3 years.
Wow, that's really big. Okay, so you talked about, attendance, so that would be one of the measures, and then are we looking at academic performance as well?
Yeah, we're looking at student achievement
As well?
and GPA.
And GPA, okay,
Mhm.
student achievement, GPA. Is that this like growth versus proficiency? Are we gonna look at?
We're gonna look
You
at
know,
both because
okay.
we can look at both.
Because
we can
it
look at
okay.
we can look at achievement, and then we can look at proficiency on statewide tests, and we can also look at growth on the MAP assessment as well.
Okay, and then I don't want to
Depending,
get too
as
much in
long
the
as the
weeds, but I'm curious,
students,
like
as long as the students are in grades 3 through 8, right? At the high school,
Okay.
we have to look at like GPA and other
Sure.
things, but at the elementary, middle levels, we can look at MAP in 2 different ways, and then also look at state assessment results. The way we're able to do
per
this
student,
per
at
student,
that granularity.
what we do is we look at each partner and the students they provided services to.
Okay,
So partners give us a list of students with their IDs, whom they're serving, and then we can load that into our data systems and match it with all the student level data in order to run the analyses ourselves.
fantastic.
So we're working on that. Those should be, and just for those of you who are very date oriented, we expect the impact analyses to be complete by February.
Okay,
I actually just this afternoon, but I haven't had time to look at it.
2 months?
Mm-hmm. For last school year, yes.
yeah, it's a look back.
It's a look back, but we'll have those done by February. I just this afternoon got an example of one that I need to look at to provide feedback to my team on, so I'm excited about that. We'll have the review platform or tool will be built by basically the first week of the new year. And then we're gonna send it out to principals and hope to have that information back by March.
Wow, so the input into an evaluation will be through principals, through this other data at the student level, and then.
The rating that you give people who respond to your request for proposal. There's like an evaluation process that you
Okay.
give to each partner or company that says, hey, I wanna provide services. So there's sort of an evaluation rubric that we'll have to design.
Yes, yes.
And so all of that will go into whether or not we work with specific partners moving forward.
And if there's a partner maybe that we've been working with, is there a way to offer them to improve or? I mean,
Sure, we
because I
have-
guess if you have the rubric, then everybody knows what the expectation
Right.
is and what the performance.
So
measures
this
are.
isn't, in our internal analyses, our impact analyses aren't, they aren't designed to be gotchas. What we do is we have quarterly meetings with our partners. We haven't had that yet this year because of the work stoppage. To be honest, we just weren't able to, and the timing wasn't right, because we were gonna have that in November and then we weren't in school. What we're planning to do, one of the ideas for our initial meeting with them, which I believe will be in early February, we'll talk about a lot of things, but one of the things we're gonna do is share partners' impact analyses with them. If their data were clean enough for us to do an analysis, and if their data weren't in a way that we could do analysis, to sit down and provide them support, so that when they provide their data throughout this year, we hope to be able to do analyses on this year's data moving forward for them.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And I'm just curious, because, we have to say yes to these contracts. We're looking at them. Will there be reviews there that we can see as a board when those come up to be voted on?
Let me talk to the purchasing. What I don't know is if we're able to disclose the scores through the RFP. So I don't know all of that. That's out of my wheelhouse, so I don't want to misspeak.
But maybe we could get to.
What I think she's referring to is, when you post the contract, then the review and evaluation would, for that contract, previous contract, she's wondering if that can be posted.
That
not
can be,
a
yes.
review
We
of
can-
the
we can-
current contract that's
Right.
in place right now.
For someone who's returning through the
Yes.
next RFP, yes, we can do that.
Okay.
We can do
You want that Yelp page.
that.
But approved by you.
I think I'm really happy to hear about this because this is something that's I've been curious about. What are we measuring and are we measuring impact? Not to put a dollar figure on everything, but for every dollar that we spend, what is the impact of each dollar that we spend in certain communities?
Sure.
We'd want it to be, something that's substantive and moves the dial, especially for our kids that aren't, meeting the standards.
Yeah, and might it be spent better elsewhere?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, actually to your,
I know that.
I reviewed your set of questions about these, this afternoon, and you had some great questions about where we're putting the dollar over the investments.
Okay,
So thanks for being proactive on that. That's
Sure.
check. I feel like I can put check mark next to that.
in progress, we're working on it.
Yeah.
Janice will soon be able to confirm it, which makes me very
Yes,
excited.
yes, well.
Yeah, great on out. Great on out. 3C is asking us, recommending that we require the review and evaluation to be reviewed and approved by the contract manager supervisor, that will be me, and submitted to the purchasing and contracting department for record keeping. And when we complete that evaluation form, we'll be able to submit all of that to the purchasing and contract office. So that's something that we can do. Absolutely.
You can put a check on that one too.
Yeah, we'll have that. I want to give us till July 1 to do that, because I'm thinking that's a safe date, because the new contracts will probably come to the board in June
Yes.
once we go through the whole RFP process. So if we have it to you in June, then I know we can have it to purchasing and contracting by July, or around the same time frame. But I just wanted to be realistic with the upcoming RFP and the request for new services and what that might look like.
Did we just finish 3B? Did we already talk about?
This was 3C. Certain ones were highlighted for me. The key ones to talk about. So we're not going in all the order of all the ones that aren't grayed out, but highlighting some ones that this committee said were important to them, the most important.
I just rattled them off. They were, it was like 3 and 3C,
4 and 4B.
4B, 8, and then 17
Okay.
and 18. 17.
So with 4,
Did you have a
oh,
question?
sorry.
Yes, sorry, correct. Yes, the polycam is frozen again and not moving around the room. Terry can
It doesn't look
change it
frozen.
up real quick if we want it, if we just need a second.
It's not
We need
tracking the
to
voices.
Stop and
Okay.
change that. I want to know how you want to.
2 minutes, if you want to just
Okay.
pause.
We'll just, not recess. We'll recess for 2 minutes
Okay.
or until,
I need some power for my laptop anyway, so.
okay.
now. Thanks.
Okay. So I have a question for Dr. Adams about the different restorative justice groups. So I know there's a lot that we're working with, but is there competition? Like, are there two groups who are helping Latinos? That one would.
That's a great question.
Contract over
The way I would answer it is I would say we have more culturally specific racial equity and social justice partners who are African American than any other group. But we also have lots of need, right? And so partners don't necessarily have to compete over the same sets of students because, of course, we have Black and brown students in all of our schools. So what we do have is a finite pot of resources for which to contract with our partners. So that usually limits what we're trying to work on. We also have different strategies, and I can share a document with this committee if it's helpful, that the racial equity and social justice partners work on, and they can choose to work on particular strategies. There are 5 of them. They can choose to work on 1 or 2, and they can work on 1 in A middle school, and 2 in B middle school, and 1 and 2 in middle school C.
So that will be really good to get some more information about how it's working.
Sure.
So we can how to continue.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What are you asking though about the competitive nature of contracting? That's what I'm curious about that too. Let's say.
I think what we did was the RFP, and we sent it out, and anybody who wanted to participate submitted applications.
Okay.
And then there's the rubric for grading. So it's similar, it's a competitive process from that perspective, that we send post the RFP, and everybody who wants to participate in providing the services that is included in the RFP submits like a proposal. So in that way, it is competitive because then they use the rubric to score, right? Score them and then pick so it is competitive from that perspective in the RFP.
Okay, so the next step is how's the job being done?
Yes.
And then there's people out there. Okay, great.
The next 2 we'll talk about, because one is nested, is 4.
I actually had a question for number. I actually had a question for number 3.
Sure.
It was. I'm looking through the scope of work for, and this seems to be constant across everything I've looked through. I've looked through Open School and Latino Network. It calls for us to do measure or grading on each contractor for different points. And when I'm looking through Open School, it has a section on page 6 for analyze the following measures regarding partner performance and impact on students, attendance, GPA, achievement, sense of belonging, referrals, and discipline, and it's just a blank box. So it seems like they're getting put in these documents but not actually being filled out across everyone that I've seen for the scope of work.
Sure. So what I can share is that when I inherited this department in August, the contracts were in process.
Yeah.
So what I'm committing to you is making things more prescribed and discreet moving forward, because I can't change what happened before I was in charge.
So in other words, that would be.
We'll still have those measures in because we're
measures.
looking at those, right? There was also my understanding in the past, perhaps the partners analyzed the data and gave that to us, which didn't make sense to me because I'm like, we have the data, so we just need to know which students you served, and we have an independent group that's all they do is analyze data, and we can have them do that for us. So I think that gives us a clear picture, unless I'm misunderstanding because I don't have my device with me.
Now that you mentioned it, now I think I might perhaps understand. So it's blank on the side where for the contractor, because they're not going to send us anything. We're going to internally evaluate based off those bullet points.
Yes.
And the contractor's not going to provide anything to us. We're doing it ourselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so these documents are being provided by the contractor. And
They give us what they give us are the students that they serve and the student's ID. And we match that up, and then we can match it to students' achievement data, their discipline data, their attendance, et cetera, and then we can run analyses to understand. And those aren't done by the racial equity and social justice team. Those are done by the research and evaluation team. So it's a different team who that's their area of expertise that does that work.
And it's somewhat independent too then, I mean.
Right, because they have nothing to do with the partnerships.
Yeah.
And so that's just going to be starting, right?
Yes, we're working on that now for last year. We're looking back at last year so we can understand performance that will inform what we do moving forward.
The writing of the RFP, et cetera.
And the awards and yes.
Excellent. Thank you. And I know it's a big body of work that we've talked at over the last few years.
Sure.
Did that answer your question, Moto?
Yeah. So are the scope of work, so I'm looking at, I went back a little bit on the workbook to the August 28th meeting, going over some of the contracts that we had put in. And those scope of work documents, are those, because I'm looking on page 6, contract performance measures, is that just data handed to us by the contractors? Or is this
Can you read
document
it?
generated
Can you
by
read
us?
the data elements to me?
I'm trying to follow it too, so.
Number, just like the different sections on the table? Is that?
I just don't have my device, so I can't track it with you.
Number of students served.
They give us that.
Number of hours per family.
They give us that.
Number of families served.
They give us that, yes.
Number of hours per student.
They give us that.
Staff demographics.
Yeah, it's their staff, yes, they provide that to us.
And then, okay, got it. Okay, cool.
Thank you, Mona.
Yeah, okay. I just want to double check that those were generated by them and not us and.
Because then what we can do is we can do analyses that say, or we can ask the question, is there a relationship between the number of hours you are provided as a student and your attendance, per se?
Okay.
If you're working on a mentoring strategy, like maybe the connection with the mentor is then being realized through your having a stronger connection to school and coming to school a little bit more frequently than you otherwise would have. So we can ask those types of questions.
Okay. Those are those pivot tables.
It could be a pivot table, yes. So if we look at, thank you, Myung, for that. If we look at number 4 and 4B, 4 talks about really the specialized scope of work and having specific performance measures and expected outcomes. And what I can say is the contracts that came forward in August are using the specialized scope of work format. And I know we need to clean up and get more specific with the types of performance measures. Again, that was in process when I took over in leadership. So that will be in place moving forward with new contracts, which will come to the board in June for July 1 or August, whatever the first day of school is, start date. So that'll be in place by July 1.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Sure. In terms of 4B, this is again about talking about performance measures. So it piggybacks with the last one. It'll be in place by July 1.
And maybe you also, I don't know the scopes of work, but my notes have, the section 5 is there, but it's blank. So I know what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Director DePass, I have number 9 identified as one you wanted to talk about, but you said number 8.
Number 9.
It is number 9?
Let's see.
Number 9, and 17 and 18, those kind of go together.
Yeah, they do. Let's see, for 8, why did I have 8 there? Developing.
Oh, that's reviewing contracts.
We can go, looking at the time, we can go through at 9. We skip 8. We can go to 9 and then 17 and 18.
Sure.
Because they are related.
So 9 is about making sure that contract management responsibilities are being performed. I see that as a part of my supervision of my team and my staff. So that
I think we do, yeah.
you do as well, right? I'm glad
That's great.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
This is really great.
I'm so excited. We agree. And so this is in place now, right? I have,
Okay, great.
with my contract managers, I have either weekly or bi-weekly check-ins where we're talking about lots of different things, including contract management responsibilities, because I understand that that's an area that was a concern and an area that came up in the audit is one that we should address. So this is in place. Also, I have not had, the office has not had a person in charge of the racial equity and social justice partnerships for 2 years.
Yes.
There's been a challenge with hiring, and I think there may have been not budget for it. I don't know. I don't have that history. But what I can tell you right now is I have budget for it. I have a position posted. I have interested applicants, and we're looking at, I'm hoping to get somebody in the seat in the next 60 days.
Wow. You're already ahead of it. That's fantastic. I mean, just to have somebody, a person assigned to
Sure.
caring about this.
It was falling on another staff member's work responsibilities on top of their already full-time job and along with another work responsibility as well. So I'm trying to clean all that up.
Trying to like isolate.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of
Like
it.
I need you to please have this. This is your full plate. And
Yes.
you don't need a second full plate.
Yes.
You can come for seconds, but you can't have 2 plates.
Yes.
Right? At the same time.
At the same
right?
time.
1 plate at a time.
This is not Thanksgiving.
This is not Thanksgiving, and we don't want people overloading. You know, I believe in
That's
work-life
great.
balance, and it's
Absolutely.
not a good balance if you're trying to do 2.5 jobs at once. So we want to stop that.
Don't want to make it feel like after Thanksgiving where you eat too much
And then you can't move.
and you're in pain because you ate way too much.
Can't do your job.
Thank you.
17. What I can say here is the position description that I have, the job posting position description for the staff member that will have this responsibilities includes language around contract management very explicitly. It is in fact the second bullet on the list of things you're responsible for.
That's fantastic.
I saw it today. I'm so excited.
And I have it here.
The best.
That is, wow.
So-
Like that's a
That
huge.
is super.
I
It
think
sounds
it's
like
really
a great
important.
job for
Yeah.
the right person.
Yeah, I'm excited about finding a good fit.
And then finally 18.
18. This was about workload, you know,
Which you
part
spoke
of
to.
yeah. So this is going to be addressed through our hiring process, where then I won't have a staff member trying to juggle all of these contracts and partnership responsibilities on top of their other regularly scheduled full load of responsibilities. So again, I'm hoping that this is resolved in the next 60 days. I mean, in terms of having someone here, we know it takes time to onboard staff
Sure.
and get them up to speed, but you know, 4 hands are better than 2 when it comes to this work. So
I guess I'm really excited about because where the work lives, and trying to align where the work lives with the needs that we have and the students that have high needs. So it seems like a good alignment of, you know, focusing on this body of work and aligning that work with the kids that need the most help in our system. So I'm really excited about it.
thank you. I've never heard of someone in an audit committee say they're excited, but I'll take it. I'm
Get
going to take
excited
it.
about everything.
I'm going to take it and run with that all the way through the holiday.
Good. Nobody said this committee wasn't.
people about party.
I did.
Yes. Nobody said this committee wasn't fun.
No, it's just my
It is a
first
little
time.
dry.
I like to experience it for myself, though.
Okay, I'm an experiential learner too. Absolutely.
So, Dr. Adams, is it okay if I update this form to list you as the responsible person?
Sure.
Because, you know, I like to have it as a person instead of like a department. Is
That's
that
fine.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
I'll update that.
And then also, are you going to be graying
I
any
will.
of these out, or do you need to have a person in the seat for you?
I will gray
Can
out.
you give him a little grace?
I have 2 that I marked to gray out.
Okay.
But we'll wait until for the rest of them. But I'll tell you.
They'll all be
as-
gray by July 15th.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Okay.
6 months, they'll all be gray.
That's excellent.
That's so exciting to me.
Yeah.
Actually.
I know it's been something we've wanted to do. I have. And
Sure.
I
It's
think
it's
since I
important
started-
work. We know our students need support. We want to fund that support, and we want to make sure that everything we're funding, that we have some kind of return on investment. So I'm a believer in all of those things. So I appreciate the committee's attention to this, and will work to improve things where I can.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
You're
Are
welcome.
there any other questions from anybody online, Andrew?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Yes, everybody have a happy holiday. I'm gonna go back to my office, check email before I go home. It's just part of what you do.
I hope you get a nice few days.
I will. Yes, I've taken next week completely off.
Excellent.
So to spend some time with family and rest.
You know, nobody moves to Oregon to work all the time.
I don't think anyone moves anywhere to do that. So thank you all. Have a good evening and a good holiday.
Thank you. Okay. We've got 2 more items, and looking at the time, it's about 25 till. We've got 2 more items. We've got an update to the edits of the board policy, and you've got a redlined board policy in board book, and we talked about this very briefly at one of our last board meetings.
No, it was at the
Sorry.
last audit committee meeting. We were wanting to bring on another community member,
Yes.
but we didn't actually have a policy that allowed for it. So this policy,
We did talk about, I mean, this was on the list of.
committee. Yeah.
Oh, so the policy committee, not the full, thank you, not the full board, that's.
So this has already gone to the policy
They're all
committee.
blending together.
Yeah.
Yes,
It has already gone to
Yes,
the
it
policy
has.
committee. The policy committee referred it out of the committee to the full board for the first reading.
Yes.
And it has been on, it has gone through the first reading.
Yes, it has.
So this is
And I
the
don't know that we've gotten
opportunity
any-
for the audit committee. If you see anything, speak now. Because this is we're moving forward and getting it approved. But I did
Yes.
want to bring back the edits to the audit committee to make sure everybody had a chance to take a look.
Yeah, I've already submitted my comments, and basically this was the language about having 2 committee members was originally in the district performance auditing policy, somehow was removed inadvertently. It's now back in, and we've got a second community member that's anxious to get started, so.
And I also think there is a other board policy that says that you can have community members on our committees. There's a different policy. So I want to assure people that by having somebody, we weren't actually running afoul of
Yes.
the other policy. This just makes it really explicit that we have this.
I thought that both were referenced, but I might be mistaken. The only other question or comment I had was whether we should require audit committee members that are community members to go through our ethics training. And perhaps the ethics training could be recorded. This was Janice's idea. Recorded, so all of our community volunteers.
And it is recorded.
So it's on YouTube. So we could.
It is on YouTube? Okay.
Because
But do we have a way to track if?
Yes, so if we did put it into Pepper, then we could track who's taken it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So just in our ethics training that we went through a couple of weeks ago,
I think we can figure out how to get that into Pepper.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about just that volunteers are public officials also. So, okay. That was my only comment.
Did you want that to be in as an edit to the do you want that in the policy, or do you want,
I think it's the other policy, Roseanne, that you just mentioned, that it would be, it's a broader policy. I don't have the number in front of me. I guess I could look it up.
I'm not sure what policy it is either.
But it should apply to all of our community members, not just.
The ethics training?
Yes.
Would students then apply as community members? Like, would students also be taking the ethics training?
That's a very good idea.
Yeah, are we student representatives or community members who are?
I thought elected officials were their own
Yes, we're our own bucket,
Yeah.
but then but community members are held to a code of conduct as well, or a standard around ethics. Do you remember in our training just a few weeks ago?
I thought it was for the committees reporting to the board.
It's committees, oh yes, and the audit,
So like
yes.
CBRC.
Yes,
and
CBRC, yes.
And those, but not general
Okay.
volunteers.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
Okay. And I thought, in my mind, it was all volunteers.
Well, I also want to differentiate because the community members, we're giving them voting,
They're-
and the students are ex officio.
Yes.
So maybe they
Do
don't
students
necessarily-
understand that ex officio is a non-voting?
So maybe the students might not necessarily need to take it if they're.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Perhaps they
There's a
could
little bit of a
for
difference.
perhaps they could for extra credit.
For fun and excitement purposes.
And lifelong learning, and because it's an interesting topic, and
I said board meetings were fun. Well, before a board meeting started, like a month and a half ago or something, and you guys were in another meeting, and everybody in the room turned around, looks at me, and just goes, "You find this fun?" The one thing I am curious about is I am not on the district student council, right? So I'm not a student representative for the district, unlike Joe. So where do I fall in? Because
It's a fall in under the discretion.
discussion of the chair.
Okay.
Okay.
And Michelle, you previously mentioned, sort of off the cuff, possibly giving student representatives, at least on the board, voting powers.
I think I might have shared that I meet board members from all over the country, and some boards have 2 student representatives, and of some of those boards they have voting. The student representative can vote on board activity.
Okay, thanks for
Yeah. So Detroit, I believe, is one of those that has 2 student reps. There are a couple in California. There's one in Texas. I can get the list if you're interested. I'm gonna take a little bit of fact finding, but yeah.
So they're voting board members.
At the board level, the student representatives are voting, and not in every district, but in some districts. And there's a movement of students, by the way, that are working to make sure every single student rep has a vote.
I think Jackson is on that.
He's working on.
Yes, he is, as a matter of fact, yes. I met a bunch of these students in Denver about a year and a half ago that did training at our conference. So yeah, there's a very strong student activist movement.
So we're okay moving, like, no, this is moving forward and we're just gonna keep it going, moving forward, nothing, no changes, okay.
So, and it's got the first reading, and it sounds like there's no comments on it, so we'll just
Let it go through the second.
let it go through.
The last thing on the agenda is you guys asked last meeting for a rough template of what we're going to do for future meetings. So I use this for myself, so I just am giving you what I already made. But I pop into this section things that I think are going to be needed in that meeting. So on the agenda, for example, in the February meeting, we'll need to talk about the OIPA budget, and in the May meeting, we'll need to talk about our annual performance evaluation. So I popped those in to the meetings, but there can still be more things if anybody wants to add to it. We can discuss more, but I just try to drop in the priority things so you can know what to expect at future meetings.
Well, I appreciate it. I find this helpful to refer back to. And we only have 2 more meetings this year. So we've got, our next meeting is February 28th at 5. It looks like a really full agenda. And then our final meeting for the year will be May 15th, 2024. With that, I'd really love to give everybody their 16 minutes back because it's the holidays and it's just the right thing to do anyway. Unless there are other questions.
Nothing for me. Appreciate it.
I was just noticing that the other policy says that community members are non-voting, and this one says they're voting. So there is a conflict there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll, there's a conflict between whether community members are voting or non-voting. I think, so can we have further discussion offline about that and figure out a path forward?
So that's a policy for the whole district then?
The board has a policy on committees.
What's the policy number?
It's 1.20.014, and it says on number 7.
When was that last amended or updated?
2017. Right? No, 2002. It's been a while.
Ah,
But that was one thing we referenced before about why we weren't concerned about having that committee member join, is because there was another policy that allowed for it.
Yes, okay. So the question is whether or not audit committee members are voting members.
It sounds like it's in conflict with another policy, but let me, probably need to reach out to legal.
Yes, and
Work through that.
policy chair.
And policy chair.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Sounds like
Then
we'd be easy fix. Yeah. Maybe.
Yes, and at that I think we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Merry Christmas.